This is our second UTOOLS session, and this session's focus is on financial aid and other resources that can help young people pay for college. And I'm Joy Douglas, and of course you can see my name on the screen. And I'm going to pass it over to Alex, who has a quick icebreaker that she wants to do with all of us.
Hi, so basically each week we're going to have like an icebreaker theme. You can either bring an object or have a cool background. This week's theme was supposed to be university. So for that reason, my background is the University of Michigan Dearborn Engineering Building that I was really excited about, but you know, COVID happened and it closed and I never got to see it in person, but you know. So if anyone wants to share, like if you don't have a background or you don't have like an object you want to share, you could still chime in, talk about the university you're either interested in, you went to in person, or you know, just something that like interests you about that university, why you like it. It could be like sports, it could be the education, whatever. If anyone wants to chime in and, you know, share whatever they'd like, you're free to. If you want, I could go first, because I study, I'm dual majoring in biomechanical engineering at the University of Michigan Dearborn. Obviously, like I don't know too much about sports, but they do have a really good engineering curriculum and all that. That's why I'm showing off the building, showing off my pride. And yeah, would anyone like to start or share?
All right, I'll go. I'm Antoinette Worth, and I'm the board chair for Career Transitions, which is running this program of UTOOLS. And I put a background for Michigan State, but I also brought my, I don't know if you can see it or not, my Wayne State coaster. Because my husband is a professor at Wayne State.
Okay. I've already introduced myself, but I do have the big M behind me, and that's where I went to school. And I liked this one because it's got like the fall leaves and fall colors behind it. So it seemed appropriate for the season.
Okay, I'm Tavia Elliott. I'll go next. I don't have a background due to my work computer here. But I just think it's interesting how we just had the game with Michigan and Michigan State, or I mean, Michigan and State, and how the fans, and I mean, you may have friends and they have the opposite teams and they really go at it. So I just really think, I mean, I don't think there's two other schools in one state that really are, you know, have friends as enemies like that. So it's just hilarious to me to see all the posts and how serious Michigan State fans were, but you know, for the win. So I just thought that was really hilarious to me.
I'm Stephanie Katie. I also have a Michigan State background. I don't know why I picked it. I always just like that simple. I mean, I could say it's because this makes me look like I have the helmet on, but I didn't do that intentionally. I just like that sleek, simple, you know, the logo represents a pretty important, good time in my life. So.
Oh, Stacy just put up a couple, huh? You're muted.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Fantastic. So I wasn't sure if it would change in time for you all to see it, but I put up the house divided because as you were talking about the schools that have the rivalry, I was thinking about the very first time I went tailgating and kind of went to the homecoming game last year. I did my undergrad at the University of Michigan Dearborn, and I did my master's at Michigan State University. So as I'm at the game, I'm there with my friends who went to Ann Arbor, who went to Dearborn, and of course they're all focused on Michigan. And I'm the only person responding "Go White" when people are yelling "Go Green" in the distance. And one of the people who I thought loved me actually pushed me into the street when I yelled "Go Green," and I'm still dealing with that. It was an empty street, it was barricaded, but still they showed me how they really felt. But I'm one of the weirdos who went to both, so I felt like this was an appropriate theme.
Thank you. All right. Should we just move on?
Yeah.
Okay. So our speakers tonight are Stacy Boone and Tanya Mackey. Tanya's going to talk about the education training vouchers that are very specific to foster youth, and Stacy's going to talk about financial aid and opportunities for earning or getting some funds to help with college education. So Stacy, you're going to go first. Who wants to go first?
I was actually going to say, I think it might make sense for me to go second.
Okay.
Because then I can kind of build on how it applies specifically to foster care.
Okay. All right. Well, Tanya, you're on then.
So can I share my screen then and share a PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, Alex has to let you in first. Yeah.
You should have access now.
Okay. Okay. Can you guys see it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I'm not sure how many youth do we have on, just so I know my audience.
I see two.
Two? Okay.
You've got Heaven and Cornelius.
Okay. Great. So I'm sorry I didn't have a theme. I didn't know we had that tonight, or I certainly would have done something. But
Okay.
so my name's Tanya Mackey, and I work for Samaritas. So we actually hold the program, or we hold the contract for the ETV program. So ETV stands for Education and Training Voucher. And I've worked with this program for almost 13 years. So I've been doing this for a long time and know a lot of resources. So I'm glad to hear someone else is touching on financial aid too, because I'm an expert in my program and I can share resources of other programs, but of course not an expert in those. So what is ETV? ETV is both federal and state funding to assist youth who have experienced some time in care with their post-secondary education. And I'll get into the actual qualifications in just a minute. But it's actually the same pot of funding as CHAFE funding, which means, so for any of our youth are on, or even, some of our professionals, CHAFE funding is also YIT funding, but it's really cool because it's the only pot of funding that you can sort of double dip on. So you can use YIT and ETV at the very same time, excluding any educational expenses. So for any educational expenses, you would come to ETV for, and then for other expenses, you would go to YIT for. So we have, students who come to us for all their educational needs, but still receive YIT funds from DHHS for like their startup goods for an apartment and things like that. So that's where our money comes from. So how much do we provide? Right now we provide up to $5,000 per year. So that's per fiscal year. And so we run on the same fiscal year as the state of Michigan. So October 1st through September 30th. Students are eligible for 2 semesters out of that fiscal year. So right now, full-time students are eligible for $2,500 per semester. So that's any student taking 12 credits or more. And then any student taking 11 credits or below is eligible for that part-time amount, which is $1,250 per semester. And I always tell students, even if you are taking one 3-credit class at a community college, you can still receive the ETV part-time amount for that. So that's really cool. And then once classes have ended, students can no longer be awarded during for that semester. But I always like to say that because we don't have like a hard deadline. Students can be awarded anytime during their semester for our program. So I still have students right now that I'm awarding for fall that just, you know, between COVID and things just might have slipped their mind, they forgot to apply. So we can still award students anytime during that semester. So who's eligible? You had to have been in care on or after the age of 14. If you were adopted or placed into a guardianship, that has to take place on or after 16. So that means if we have any students who apply and they were in care at 14 or 15, but an actual adoption was finalized or a guardianship took place at that 14th or 15th birthday, they would not be eligible. They have to have your high school diploma or GED, so we can award dually enrolled students. And then you have to attend an accredited college, university, or training program. And I like to point that out because that doesn't mean just universities and community colleges. We also have a lot of our students attending vocational programs and trade programs. As long as they're accredited by the U.S. Department of Ed, then they can still receive ETV. We also have our refugee minors, and then this is a big one. You have to receive your first ETV by your 21st birthday. Once that happens, you can continue to receive it up until age 26, but you have to receive your first one by 21 for that to happen. In 2018, they did put a cap on us, so you can only receive ETV for a maximum of 5 fiscal years. So you know, if you entered college at 17 or 18, you wouldn't be able to get it up until 26 through your master's program or anything like that. So just 5 fiscal years. But what that does benefit is those students who might come, you know, start school and decide, you know, I'm not ready right now, and then decide to go back at a later date. So we're getting a lot of those students that are going later on. And then one other thing I just quickly wanted to mention is I didn't point out out-of-state institutions. We are the one program in Michigan that you can receive our funding at any nationally accredited college, university, or vocational school. So we have students all over the country attending school and receiving ETV. So basically every state has their own ETV program, but you apply for ETV and through which state you were in care through. So even though a student might attend school in Florida or Texas, they'll still apply for Michigan ETV. So when should I apply? Students need to have their high school diploma or GED and be enrolled in their school to receive funding. So I tell, like when I do this for high school guidance counselors or a lot of our workers, I tell them to start the process like in the springtime near graduation. So obviously they're not going to have all those documents that we need just yet, but as long as we have an application started for our program, we can get the ball rolling on our end. You know, guidance workers might no longer be, you know, involved in the student's life. The cases may close, things like that. But once we have an application started, we actually have workers that can call and email students in the system to get their application processed and get them awarded. So our process is pretty simple. It's a 4-step process. Step 1 is that you must complete the FAFSA, and it sounds like the next speaker is going to go over that a little bit, but that can be completed as early as October 1st for the following school year. And then I just always like to mention that students who were in care on or after the age 13 can mark the box that they were in care during that time after the age of 13, and they'll bypass any sort of bio-parent information, and then they can file as an independent student. The DHHS 945 is a form that a DHHS worker can fill out that you would just give to the school to verify your independent status. So if I have students who, you know, they're like, my case is closed, I don't know how to get a hold of anybody, and our state contract manager can fill those out for students as well. So I always let students just let me know if you need help getting that file, and we'll be happy to help you. The next step, like I mentioned, is you have to have your diploma or GED and be enrolled in school. And I already went over that. And then the third step is to complete our application. It can be found on our website, and we have 2 applications. We have a paper application, which is really simple. You can print off, take pictures, email it back to us, fax it, mail it, whatever works for you. And we also have an online application. The online application is a little cumbersome, so we are a contracted program, so we didn't have a huge budget for our IT needs. So there's a lot of flaws in our online application, but I've done it a few times, test applications. The biggest problem with it is we still have to have the other documents I'm going to talk about in a minute, and those, so like once you complete the online application, you'll get an email that says, you know, thank you for your application, you're not done yet, and they'll let you know what else you need. But either application is totally fine to submit for us. So like I said, I can email you a paper application. Both the paper application and obviously the website version is available on our website. I'm not going to go through our whole paper application, but that's just the front page of it. There's a checklist, and then it's just 4 pages, basically asking your name, date of birth, all your school information, a budget form that just talks about how you might want to spend your funding for the semester, educational goals, and it just kind of goes over the rules of our program, and then just a release form if we have to talk to the school. I wasn't going to go over the whole online application process, but I just wanted to point out real quick that if you are going to do the online application, before you can do it, you have to register first. So when you get to our online application, you'll go to register online, and you'll submit your information, and then it'll email you a PIN, and then you just get back online, and then you can hit apply online. So it's actually pretty simple. You just, if for a very brand new first time student, you have to register first. And then some of our students that, you know, might have sent paper applications in the past and are now applying, they don't have to register online, and if they don't have a PIN number, we can email them one. We just have a button that we hit, and we don't see it, it'll just send it right to them. So that's our application. And then the 4th step is we just have some documents that we need along with the application. It includes a copy of that high school diploma or GED, their class schedule. So right now their fall class schedule, their account summary, and it does have to show what their tuition balance is. And that determines how we process their funding. So if they owe any funding to the school, we send that directly to the school. And if they don't owe funding to the school, then they can use it for other educational expenses. We have to see their financial aid package. So as I said, it's a requirement that they do fill out the FAFSA to receive ETB. So we just, the most important thing is that we just want to make sure that they're receiving all the aid that they are eligible for. We need an acceptance letter to the school, and if it's not their first semester, we just need a copy of their cumulative GPA, which does need to be a 2.0 or higher. And then just a lot of times we'll ask for some supporting budget documentation on how they, how you plan to use your money for the semester. So, you know, if you're gonna purchase a computer, a copy of a computer estimate, or if you need dorm furniture or a mini fridge, something like that, just estimates of those from, you know, Walmart.com. If you know, are an apartment, a copy, first page of your lease, something like that. And that's all our application is. So it's either our 4-page application or the online application, and then these other documents. And then once we have all those, you'll be all set. So it's a really, really simple process. And we have a couple caseworkers that also can assist and help collect documents, help you navigate your portal if you're having trouble finding, you know, your account summary or something like that. So that's basically the application process. Is there any questions so far? Anything like that? You want me to just keep going? Okay. So how do we distribute our funds? So like I mentioned, if a student owes any money to the school, we have to pay that first and foremost. But we're actually so lucky in the state of Michigan with so many supportive college programs and scholarships that I truly don't see as many balances anymore as I used to years ago. So, I mean, we do send funding to the schools still sometimes, but it's crazy how much that we really truly don't have to anymore. And then any remaining amount can be put towards any of their educational expenses. And we are really lenient, and in state of Michigan policy is written really lenient in terms of those educational expenses. So they can use it for so many expenses. And we process checks on a case-by-case basis. So, you know, if they owe $700 to the school, we can, you know, put that to the school and the rest to them. If they really don't have an immediate need and they're like, you know, I just have, you know, my daily living expenses, so we'll do smaller checks, like maybe 500. They send receipts, we send more. So it's really case-by-case basis on how they need to spend their funding for that semester. So next, just a few, not an exhaustive list, but I'd just like to show, this is just a few things that you can use the funding on. So, and of course, any kind of books and school supplies, any kind of like dorm supplies, housing supplies, computers, of course, vehicles or any maintenance supplies, any kind of furniture, any groceries, even your clothing, your phone bills. Most all our students have phones, even the purchase of a cell phone, any kind of you know, medical expenses that, you know, we have students that have used some of it towards orthodontist bills and things like that. So anything that's truly helping you live and go to school, we can usually pass as an educational expense. Just a few that are not, any kind of entertainment costs. Actually, tablets are now, it doesn't say it in policy yet, but we are changing it where iPads and tablets can be used. A lot of our students will use those as their computer, or you know, get a keyboard with it. So we have changed that. But any kind of entertainment expenses, you know, jewelry, cosmetics, things like that. Pet supplies, we get a lot of receipts for those. You know, vacations, anything like that. Study abroad, they can use ETV for. So just to name a few. And then I always tell our students, make sure you save your receipts. So in order to ever receive funding from our program, again, you have to have receipts on how that funding was spent. So some students, you know, send me receipts as they get them. Some will just take a picture and send it. You know, some will send their rent ledger showing the rent payments. Some will send, you know, they might have purchased a car. Some, of course, if we send it all to the school, that's an easy receipt because it'll reflect it on their account statements. So we have to have receipts of any purchases made in order to ever receive funding again. So I have mentioned that it's split into 2 semesters. So students need to reapply for that next semester. So during a fiscal year, students are eligible for 2 semesters. Like I said, you can access it until 26, maximum of 5 years. So when you reapply for that next semester, you have to be enrolled for your next semester. So say a student finishes up the end of December, has their winter semester class schedule. We just need a copy of that new schedule. They have to have a cumulative GPA of a 2.0 or higher. So we do look at your overall cumulative GPA. So students that might have been attending for a couple of years and something might have happened where they just didn't have a really great semester, we do look at their overall semester, which is really great. Sometimes we'll call students to remind them to reapply, and they'll be like, oh, I got like a 1.9 last semester. I didn't think I was eligible. And when we look at their cumulative, it's okay. So that actually does help students that have been coming to our program for a while. And then you can only have 1 withdrawal or incomplete per semester. So if you drop more than 1 class, you would not be eligible that next semester. So if the cumulative GPA falls below 2.0, or you drop more than 1 class, that doesn't mean you're never eligible again. It just means you have to complete a semester without receiving ETV to kind of bring those grades back up, and then you would be eligible again. So in addition to just providing funding and in processing checks and all that kind of stuff, and I did want to mention real quickly, we still process checks. So it is still kind of old school, paper checks we send to our students, we send to the schools. However, we do it very quickly. So we process checks every single week. So even during COVID, at the very beginning, I was coming in every other week to do it. But right now I'm still coming in the office twice a week to get those out. So there's really not a long lag of time in terms of receiving funding. So we do try to process funding really quickly for our students. If I receive an application that's fully completed today, that student could get a check as early as the end of next week. So back to our case managers, we also have 2 case managers that assist our students however is needed. So they're nothing like their caseworker, or they're just an extra support system for them, whether it be, you know, to send the receipts to, or to ask, you know, when they're eligible to apply again, or just ask questions if they know other resources, just sort of a helping hand for them. So every brand new student that comes to us, they will meet with one of the caseworkers, either in person or over the phone, to kind of go over the program. Right now, we've been doing them all over the phone or via Zoom. We're doing them Skype, Zoom, Microsoft Teams, any kind of platform that works for a student we're using. And then just help them understand the process, understand the eligibility requirements. They kind of remind them to reapply each semester, go over the program, things like that. So if they're attending a school that has a campus-based support program, we might put them in contact with the campus-based support coaches if that's something that they're interested in, reminding them to apply for their Fostering Future Scholarship, things like that. So they're absolutely just an extra helping hand to ask questions, to go over the program, things like that. They contact all of our students on a quarterly basis. Like I say, ongoing email and communication. We always support the students in terms of if their grades go down, they're marked to kind of call them to see how they did that semester, to see if they brought their grades back up. And then we're trying something where we're trying to connect some of our younger ETV students with our older ETV students that might be at the same institution as a mentor-mentee relationship. So truly just support systems. So that's ETV in a nutshell. If you have any questions, let me know. I'm not sure everything that the next presenter is going to talk about, but I had TIP and the Fostering Futures on here as a couple other financial aid resources. Of course, the tuition incentive program, a lot of our students who have experienced time in foster care are eligible for. So it's not based on foster care, it's based on Medicaid, but many of our students have received Medicaid for the 24 out of 36 consecutive months to receive TIP. And it's paid out in 2 separate phases. And so most of the phase 1 schools are your community colleges, and then TIP will kick in for phase 2 at universities. So if you have any questions regarding TIP, you can go to the michigan.gov/mySSG website, and there's a TIP fact sheet on there that's super user friendly. But the biggest thing about TIP is that you have to enroll in TIP by August 31st of your graduating year. So if you're I know they did make an exception this year with COVID, and I'm not sure what date they changed it to, but you have to enroll in the program, and it's really simple. If you call the number, it takes like two minutes tops to call, or you can log into the portal and do it that way. Even if you're a high school student and you don't know where you're going to college, you can still log in and complete that and change all the school information later. But the biggest thing is to do it by the end of August of your graduating year. And then the next one is the Fostering Future Scholarship. So they typically have a hard deadline it's typically June 30th. With COVID this year, it was extended to September 1st. I'm not sure. They usually, I work real closely with Treasury's office who administers this, and they typically start pushing the applications out like mid to late spring of the date it'll be due and the application will be up. So that application and that scholarship is for students who were in care on or after the age of 13. There's no upper age limit, so they have students who are in their 30s and 40s coming back to school and still receiving the Fostering Future Scholarship. It's a 1 application per year scholarship. So if you miss the deadline, you have to, like if you missed it this year, you'll have to wait all the way till next year to get it for the 21-22 school year. And their application can be found on the fosteringfutures-mi.com website. That scholarship as well goes directly to the school. So the State of Michigan Treasury Office will send the Fostering Futures Scholarship directly to the school and take care of it that way. So that's our program in a nutshell. Like I say, here is you can email me if you have any questions. It's tmackey@samaritas.org. And then Stacy is our case manager who serves most of the state of Michigan and our out-of-state students. And then we have Ansel, who's located in our Detroit office, and he serves all our Southeast, primarily students in that area. So we're on Facebook. We try to post, if we hear of any other scholarship opportunities, send reminders to apply, anything like that. So that's all I have. Does anyone have any questions? I know it's a lot of information. Really quick.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
The last slide that you had up with all of your contact information, is that something that we can share on our own website or Facebook page?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
I'll send it to you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and if you need any information for your website or anything like that, just let us know. But we share PowerPoints, we share all kinds of stuff. But yeah, so that's our program in a nutshell. And like I said, if you have any questions, we've been doing a lot of these, so I feel like I'm talking so quick because it's like you've been saying the same information over and over again. But at least it's good to get the information out there. And I always tell students and workers and anything, if you didn't get anything out of it, just take our information and at least remember the program and Google it and call us. Or right now, email's probably the best. We're the quickest on that due to, working remotely and everything like that. But we're really responsive. And like I say, even with COVID, there's not really been a lag of time in our responses or processing funding, anything like that. So.
Well, thank you very much. That was really helpful. So now, Stacy, you're on.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, and I actually have a quick update to share. I do have a little bit of tip built into this, but there is an update to the process for tip. I and a few colleagues have been working with TICAS to work with the State of Michigan Treasury. And based on some recommendations that we made, the tip application has actually disappeared. So students no longer have to go in to register, which was a huge barrier for students who would have been eligible, but may not have known or understood that registration process for tip. We are working with the state to figure out what mechanisms look like for students to automatically be awarded if they show up at eligible institutions so that they don't have to remember to register, remember which order they listed schools on in their FAFSA, or go to the financial aid office and say, hey, I think I'm eligible for this thing. So for all the students on the call, that does stand in your favor, and that is one more type of funding that, should you be eligible, should automatically be applied to you. So that is very exciting. I am sharing the screen now. Can everyone see?
Yes.
Fantastic. So again, my name is Stacy Boone. A bit of background about me. Born and raised in Detroit, did experience foster care myself. This is something that is very near and dear to me. I do have the closed captions on at the bottom for anyone who might have an easier time reading along. I'm going to try to make this quick because I know that I want to make sure that everybody is being respected and that we're ending at 6. So one of the most important things you're going to need to do as a student is make sure that you are getting your FAFSA done. You will complete the FAFSA every single year, no matter what level of school you're attending. So when you go on to law school, when you go on to get that medical degree, when you go to art school, when you get that PhD, that master's, you are still going to complete a FAFSA every single year you show up to anyone's college. The FAFSA at the undergraduate level will qualify you for 1, Pell. And since we are speaking to foster youth, all of you will automatically be eligible for Pell. because the state is essentially your parent, and then whomever is acting as that guardian or that worker is essentially a nanny. So with that being said, Pell is based solely on income. It is not based on academic performance. It is not based on characteristics. It is not based on athletic ability. It is just solely based on need. And since all of you do not or are not considered to have human parents who are standing in the gap to make sure that that funding is there for you, you're automatically going to be eligible for Pell as long as you follow the steps. The Pell Grant as of right now is $6,395 per year. So that is a good chunk of money to help you complete those college costs. There's also work study. I would recommend that as you're filling out your FAFSA, you all say that you're eligible and interested in work study. Work study will offset some of the loans that you're available for, but the great thing about Pell is that as long as you're completing your courses, you do not have to pay that money back. That is free money to you. Work study, you'll never have to pay back because you earned it. However, the next thing that the FAFSA could qualify you for is loans. And some of those loans are subsidized and unsubsidized loans. But if you say that you're interested in work study, that will offset your need for loans depending on the institution that you apply to. But as Alexandra said, a lot of institutions are doing a lot of work around making sure that they are fundraising and setting aside a lot of funding specifically to care for and support students who are coming out of foster care. So please make sure that you're doing your research among institutions to make sure that you're finding a good fit for yourself and to make sure that you're finding an institution that is really rooted and invested in making sure that they're showing up for you financially. Again, we did talk about TIP. That is funding that essentially the Pell Grant comes from the federal government, and then the state of Michigan has their version, is the largest grant that the state gives out. It is again based on your Medicaid not performance, but participation. And since you are in foster care, it is likely that you've participated in Medicaid unless you've had some very specific situations. And also be aware of verification. Indicating on the FAFSA that you're not going to report parental information is almost guaranteeing that you're going to be selected for verification each year. So when you get that 945 from your social worker, that form that you get from the social worker that says that you were in foster care, you're going to want to hold on to that. I do recommend that you make a copy or on your cell phone and your camera, if you can see that. Most cell phones have a scan option in your camera. Take a picture of that, scan it, email it to yourself. Because every year that you do that FAFSA, if your financial aid office asks for a copy of that form, you'll have it in your email, you'll never lose it. But it is likely that you will need to submit that every single year when you get selected for verification, because typically reporting that you're not giving parental information at your age will appear as an anomaly in the system. Bear in mind that verification is not punitive. They're not trying to punish you or catch you in a lie. It is just something that is automatically caught when you do something that triggers the system, like not performing or not reporting, parental information. Key points that you should keep in mind as you are looking for colleges and thinking about financial aid. Each college has a different budget. So there's some schools that have a ton of money. There's some schools that have a little bit of money. You're going to have to do some research to figure out what that endowment looks like at each school. You're also going to want to look at what type of funding they have available specifically for foster youth. Also, schools are getting state appropriations if they are public schools. So there are 15 public schools in the state of Michigan, and then there are a number of private schools. There are also for-profit schools, which generally we recommend students stay away from. For-profit schools are very good at being aggressive and making sure that they're recruiting you very arduously. So make sure that when you're looking at schools, you're asking, are you a public institution? Are you a private institution? With one of the advantages of a public institution being that they get money from the state to help make tuition cheaper for everyone. Also, some schools are better at fundraising than others. There's one school, I won't say which, unless you ask in the chat if you really want to know. But there's one school that went on a campaign and said, we want to raise $5 billion to build an endowment so that we can fund every student who comes here and has financial need but can make it at our institution. And as they were on that trail and that campaign to raise $5 billion, they made a mistake and raised an additional $4 billion. So they ended up with $9 billion and they didn't mean to. But what that means is they have a lot more money to turn around and give to students. And there are other schools that just don't have that kind of juice. So make sure you're asking those questions, you're doing your research. And when you are going to those virtual college fairs, when those reps are reaching out to you, that you are asking the questions as far as what will financial aid look like for me here. But this also means that you need to make sure you're applying to a variety of institutions. If you are applying to a lot of schools that are less competitive, your financial aid offers at those schools are going to look very similar. If you're applying to some schools that are mid-tier, your financial aid offers are going to be a little bit better. If you're applying to some very competitive schools that seem a little bit harder to get into, those are likely the schools that have the deeper pockets. But the great thing is you should not be afraid of applying to those competitive schools, because all the research that we see for students who've gone through this before is that when students attend schools that are just above where they think they are academically and where their GPA and test score indicates they're performing, when you go to a school that's a little bit harder, a little bit more challenging, you're actually more likely to graduate. And the schools that have higher graduation rates have a lot of benefits, which we will get into later. Also understanding that each student will have their own circumstances. Being a youth in foster care, you are going to get a lot more consideration than other students. But if you've also got some athleticism behind you, if you're participating in sports, if you have some weird obsessions with Harry Potter literature, for example, that's another opportunity for you to get some Quidditch scholarships. There are table tennis scholarships. There's funding for everything, every trait, every interest that you can imagine. And a lot of this money sits on the table because students don't want to look for the scholarships, or they're not interested in writing the essays or doing the videos. I would definitely recommend you do that, because sometimes that means more money in your financial aid package, but other times that can also mean more money in your pocket. So make sure you're looking for those things. Other things to keep in mind is that the population is down, so it's a little less competitive because there aren't as many students looking for scholarships right now. And enrollment is down, which means if you are that student who steps out on faith and decides to take that plunge into college, there's going to be a lot more support left for you because other students are a little hesitant right now. Make sure you're comparing your award letters. Again, every school doesn't have the same amount of money to give to you. So whatever you get from the FAFSA is going to be the same no matter where you go. What you get from the state is going to be the same depending on whether the school can accept that phase or that type of funding. So that may or may not appear on every award letter. But in addition, if you were to go to Antoinette's University of Awesome-tacularness, she might have $10,000 to give to you that Perry Boyd's University of Walking Along the Sidewalk doesn't have to offer you. And so those are things that you want to consider when you're looking at your award letters. You also want to, again, consider the budget of the college. Some of them have larger endowments than others. Some of them are fundraising a lot harder because they have a passion for supporting independent and foster youth, unaccompanied youth. Again, public schools are getting government appropriations that a lot of other schools are not getting. And then some schools are doing a really great job of fundraising, and they have more visibility than other schools and more brand recognition, so they can command more money. Some things to know about the financial aid office, because sometimes students have a tendency to feel like they have to be a little bit adversarial or at odds with the financial aid office. So there are a few things I want you to keep in mind. They are ruled by federal guidelines. So if they add up the cost of tuition and then they add up how much it costs to get an apartment or live at home or live on campus, how much students typically spend on food and books and supplies and clothing, they will come up with a number that equals your cost of attendance. If your cost of attendance is this much and you come to them with this many scholarships, they still can only award up to this full amount. So if you earn $3 million in scholarships, but it only costs $30,000 a year to go to that school, they can only award you $30,000 according to federal regulation. So please make sure that when you're applying to scholarships, you're not applying to scholarships that only apply to tuition. You're not applying to scholarships that only apply to room and board. You want to get a mix so that you can have some funding to apply to different costs. You also, again, consider the cost of attendance. EFC doesn't really apply to you because as a foster youth, your EFC is going to be 0. And the lifestyle that you want to live while you're in college. Understand that for the cost of attendance, colleges are sending out surveys to students. Some students live really extravagant, fancy, luxurious lifestyles. Other students live lifestyles that are very cheap, frankly, and are very smart with their money. And so they're kind of putting an average together to tell you what they think you might spend, but that cost of attendance is not a bill. If you spend less money on clothing, if you're not buying Starbucks every day, if you're not going to Starbucks 3 times a day, your cost of attendance is actually going to turn out to be a little bit less than some other students. Again, make sure you're looking at the terms and conditions of different scholarships. If that scholarship only applies to tuition and fees, you might earn 5 full tuition and fees scholarships, but you're only going to get to spend 1. So make sure you're applying to a variety of scholarships and grants. Make sure you understand the difference between how that money will pay out. Some scholarships will say, I will pay out first. Some scholarships will say, I'll pay a little bit toward tuition and a little bit towards other costs. And then some scholarships are last dollar, and those scholarships will say, you've got to spend everything else and then ask me for money. So make sure you understand the terms and make sure you're talking to financial aid. Also, make sure you are not turning away financial aid opportunities. I don't know the background of everyone on this call, but I will speak for myself and say that I am not a financial aid administrator. I do not work at a college as a financial aid administrator, so I am not qualified to put your package together for you. And I'm gonna guess that you are not either. You don't have that training. So you should not be saying, no, thank you, I don't need this scholarship to anyone. You're not qualified to do that. You should take every option, every opportunity, every offer that you get to the financial aid office and let them tell you best in your favor. You also want to make sure, again, you understand the order, and they usually don't have an incentive to award against your best interest. Now, if you're going to a school that is really having a hard time stretching their budget and attracting students, you might have some instances where they're trying to make sure that they're taking a little bit from you to give to other students. But in most cases, schools will make offers to students knowing that they can afford to fulfill that offer. So you should be approaching financial aid as though you want to make friends, not as though someone is trying to take something away from you. Graduation rates matter. If you don't get anything else from this conversation, understand that graduation rates matter, specifically based on your identities. So for example, I identify as a Black woman, meaning that when I'm looking at colleges, I'm looking at what is your overall graduation rate? What is your graduation rate for Black students? What is it for women? And what is it for Black women? So there are some schools that might have a 47% graduation rate overall, but when you drill down to Black women, it's an 18% graduation rate. And what that means is 18 out of every 100 Black women who enroll in that college actually finish a degree 6 years later. But even if you don't finish that degree, you still have the debt and you still haven't walked away with a credential that's made that time useful to you. So you want to make sure that you're asking colleges, what is your graduation rate for people who identify the way that I do? And if the numbers don't sound good, that's probably not a place that's figured out how to support you. But another reason that graduation rates are important is because students will say, well, I'll make sure I'm the one who graduates. But if you're the only one who graduates, that alumni party is pretty sad. When you're looking to meet your next mentor, when you're looking to meet the next person who can point you to a job or a position that they know someone is hiring for, if no one is at that alumni party, you're not making the connections that make it worthwhile for you to attend that university in the first place. You also need to understand that having more students who graduate from your college means you have more people to ask for money. And when they call me, when U of M calls and asks for money, when MSU calls and asks for money, and I give them money so that they stop calling me, that is money that they turn around and give to students so that you don't have to take out as many loans. General rule is the higher the graduation rate, the more money they have to give away, and that lessens the amount of loans that you might have to look at. Again, compare your award letters. More money doesn't mean it's less expensive. Some schools might say, we're going to give you $30,000, but it might cost $60,000 to go there. Other schools might say, we're only going to give you $27,000, but it might only cost $27,500 to go there. So make sure you're looking at how much money they're giving you in relation to how much it's going to cost you overall. Make sure you find out whether your funding is renewable or whether it's only for the first year. Some schools will hook you as a freshman and then hope that you get used to being there and that you'll just take out the loans and figure it out for the rest of the years. Make sure you understand the terms for keeping your funding. What is satisfactory academic progress? How high do my grades have to be? How many classes do I have to finish? How much time do I have to graduate? Are there any questions? Any questions at all? Drop them in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and speak. I know I just threw a lot at you, but make sure that you are getting these questions answered. I see one now. So let me stop sharing. Oh, you're welcome, Joy. If there are any questions from any students at all, please make sure you are seeking these answers and asking questions. We all showed up on an evening to be here for you, and we want to make sure that you feel empowered and have the information that you need.
Great job, Stacy.
Oh, thank you for that.
Do you know,
Oh,
of any websites where they can look up scholarship information?
absolutely, and I will drop some of those in the chat right now. So I'll put these in the chat, and students, if you want to kind of copy paste before the call ends, there's bigfuture.org, which is owned by College Board. That is the same organization that owns the SAT or AP exams, if you've heard of those, or CLEP exams, which is another great way to save money. There's also collegegreenlight.com. Let me make sure I spelled that right. Yep. And College Greenlight is a site where you will fill out a profile. They will ask you everything from what grade are you in to do you like to wear polka dot socks on Wednesday afternoons between 4:30 and 7 p.m. But they will ask some very specific questions and then generate a whole list of scholarships that you might be eligible for. You still have to do the work in making sure that you're applying to them. But they'll also tell you what your chances might be of getting into certain colleges that you're interested in. And they will tell you what your financial aid offer might look like at that school. And then another good one is Raise Me. And Raise Me is another platform that will have you fill out a profile about yourself. And then they will tell you, tell us what your grades are. Was this an honors course? Was this an AP course? Did you lead any student organizations? Were you on debate? Did you play a sport? Were you in choir? And from there, they will tell you how much different colleges will pay you in scholarships for that experience. So those are some great places to get started. And then I know Alexandra also brought up my student aid and MISSG. So michigan.gov/MISSG is another great website that you can go to. They put together a database of scholarships that are specific for Michigan students all across the state. So that's another place for you to go and look at as well. And then the last one is the Community Foundation of Southeastern Michigan. They have a singular application that you fill out, and based on your answers, they will automatically submit you for application to a number of scholarships that leave their funding with the Community Foundation. So hopefully that's enough to get you started.
That's awesome. Would you be able to send us a copy of your PowerPoint presentation so we can post it on our website?
Yes, I can do that.
And is your contact information on it as well?
I can add that to it.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Of course.
Anybody have anything else they'd like to offer? So our next session is going to be next Tuesday. And the topic is going to be strategies for high school and college success. And our guest speaker is Mr. Perry Boyd from the University of Michigan, Dearborn. Hopefully we'll have some more youth participate. Appreciate everybody's participation tonight, and thank you for coming. And Tanya, thank you also. And hopefully we'll be in touch with you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So we're going to be hopefully do this again in person next year like we have been. So we'll be in touch with you sometime in June when we're ready to, well when we're free to have classes and sessions at the university. So thank you. Everybody enjoy the rest of your week.
Thank you. Do the
Thank you.
same.